Welcome to the Resident Council Information Meeting. Unfortunately, we cannot do this in a way that would enable all residents to attend, but we have an excellent crew, 88, and they will be recording and it will be shown sometime next week. Joining the Resident Council today are Todd Murch, CEO of Eschaton Corporation, Greg Click, our Executive Director, our two representatives to the corporate board, Mayanne Sheldon and Mary Dial, and Dick D'Agostino, our parliamentarian. First of all, we want to recognize certain people, and I'm asking Al Walden to do the honors.
As you have known in the last 16 months, wherever you've been, you've seen a sign, Heroes Work Here. Eschaton is no different. Today I have the privilege to acknowledge several of those, and I want to thank them for being here. Richard Smith and Anita were put in a very difficult place. One day they were serving all of us a meal. The next day we were closed. Then they tried a buffet luncheon and dinner in cardboard containers. Well, that worked okay until we figured out we didn't know much about being separated one from another. And social distancing did not work well. So then we were in our rooms getting meals in cardboard cupboards, carriers. Then they expanded that to carriers that could be washed. And we were still in our rooms. Then we anxiously awaited the telephone call that said, you were chosen to come down for dinner tonight or next week. And we did. And it was expanded from 20 to 40. Then the cafe opened, and then Richard and Anita opened up the well. And we just thank you so much for that. And then we knew we were back on track when brunch was served. And that was great. Thank you again. And while we were being fed, our friend Gay challenged our minds. Puzzles. Crosswords, whatever and people rush down there to find out what. And bingo, yes. I always knew somebody was coming close to bingo when they rush by me and run to the mailroom to see what number was up today. So I figured that was good. And oh yes, we were sent on searches for leprechauns and groundhogs, and you did such a good job. Thank you for keeping our minds going. Oh, and yes, Judy. There was always an article for Judy. Keeping us fit is fun. Well, okay. That was her title, not mine. But she did a very good job. She wrote articles about putting color in your diet, drinking water, and walking a lot. And then the binders came out, and people rushed down to sign up for exercise, for water, and free swim. Then the binders disappeared, and Judy opened up for us. Thank you, Judy. And then Tim showed up with a great resume. And Tim was very kind. He's he knows security. We had a very good time with him, And Tim is so friendly. He offered to help Sally with the treasure sale and gave people a lift down there. I didn't know you did the lift.
I didn't know either.
I didn't know either. So and I hope that all of you take time to once again thank these people and their staffs for all they have done for us, getting us through this pandemic and getting us almost back to normal. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I'm sorry this couldn't have happened in person. We, thought it was going to be a standing ovation with a whole crowd, but that's the way it is. Next, there is important information that Todd will share with us. Recently, Todd joined our council meeting to explain his current thinking regarding assisted living. Our reaction was to ask him to share his thoughts on the subject at the information meeting so everyone can hear. So, your turn, Todd.
Okay, I will take off with that wonderful intro, thanks. It was very helpful for me to come chat with the resident council a couple weeks ago so they could hear the new concept that I will explain to you in a minute and get some initial feedback, and then of course they've had time to think about it, so I believe there might already be some prepared questions as well, which is wonderful. So let me start with my visit back a couple of weeks ago to the resident council. As you know, we have had an assisted living expansion project mapped out for the front part of the property for some time. As you might recall, the configuration of that building was going to be 20 apartments, 16 of which were one bedroom, 4 of which were 2 bedroom, with a lot of the common area in the central part of the building. And pre-COVID, we had some cost estimates from Auto Construction, who we have worked with much in the past. And round numbers, we were placing the building about $9.5 million or a little bit more for the construction, and another $1 million by the time he did furnishings and a lot of the other soft costs. And we were in permitting and county approvals and so on. And then the COVID year slowed things down a lot. More recently, over the past couple of months, we've tried to resurrect that project and went out to rebid it. Somewhat surprisingly, but not completely surprisingly, the cost escalated significantly. I know everybody's read and heard about the cost of building materials, labor, everything else. Well, the cost, the physical construction part of it went up to round numbers about $14 million. And then another $1 million in, for the furnishings and soft costs. That really didn't change much, that component piece. But what it did was elevate the total for the 20 rooms to about $15 million all in. So if you do the math, that's about $750,000 per apartment. So that is quite significant. I thought it was a good point in time to just ask if I can come over and speak with the resident council a little bit and share some thinking. That's quite a bit more than we've ever paid for anything, but that's not unusual. Some of our stuff was built 10 years ago or 20 years ago, so you'd expect it to be higher. But $750,000 per apartment is getting quite into the stratosphere a little bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the specific building. If we want to green light that, there probably is a path forward. The additional cost would probably be covered by debt, which we had not planned on for this expansion, but interest rates are so low and that additional cost could be deferred out over so many years if it was 20 to 30-year debt that it would still make it possible. The other aspect of it is that monthly rates for those one-bedroom and two-bedroom apartments would probably be, we always wait to do the pro forma and market tests out when we're in construction and heading towards opening, but they'd probably be in the neighborhood of $8,000 for the one-bedroom apartment, and not sure yet for the two-bedroom, but it would probably be up around $12,000 to $13,000. So my thought was to ask the resident council if this isn't, a pause and possibly consider other alternatives type of moment. And specifically, the other alternative was to float the idea of a more residential physical model to deliver assisted living. By residential, I mean literally 3 homes constructed out on that site that the other larger building would have been constructed on. So right away, there were some very good questions asked. The first question was, are you talking about a board and care home? Well, conceptually, it's similar, but with a few very notable and important differences. One is not a board and care home in the sense that it's an existing home out in the community that was not built specifically for the delivery of assisted living. The homes I'm talking about would be board and care in concept, in that they would be residential construction homes with a limited number of bedrooms. Staffing would be a little different. I'll get into that momentarily. But they wouldn't be retrofitted homes. From the onset point, they would be very intentionally and purposefully designed for the purpose of assisted living. So instead of being retrofitted, there'd be a lot of intentional and conscious thought into what do say they were 5 bedrooms each. What do the 5 bedrooms look like? What size would they be? Would each house have an oversized bedroom to allow capacity for a couple, and so on? And how would the common areas work? And would there be a toileting and bathing in a shower in each room, and so on and so on? So in that respect, it'd be very intentionally built. So the idea was that perhaps there could be 3 of those homes, each potentially 5 bedrooms, each having one oversized bedroom that would comfortably accommodate a couple. So board and care only in the sense of the physical delivery. It would be 5 residents each, maybe more if there was a couple in each home side by side. Each home would have a kitchen, probably still have some food delivery from the main dining room here, as the assisted would have if we built a larger building. So then, some good questions. How would it interact with the rest of the campus? Would the residents feel isolated because it was a smaller home? Some really good things. But going back to what caused us to have that discussion, if the original building had ballooned up to 15 million, hypothetically, without going through all the specking and quoting yet, if we could build each home, each of the 3 homes for between 2 million and 2.5 million, let's pick the larger number, 2.5 million, that'd be 7.5 million. So we can accomplish the same or similar expansion with a different physical delivery model for about half as much as it would cost to build the larger one. So a residential concept is interesting. It appeals to some, probably not others. This is an introduction more broadly to all the residents now as it's broadcast, so there'll be more questions than perhaps just the resident council had. The price point was another question somebody had. So the price point, I'm guessing, would be between the current existing living, which is predominantly studios, and then the higher 8,000 number I quoted a minute ago. So I would imagine that the pricing for these new residential model approaches would be somewhere in between. The staffing would be different, probably higher staffing actually, because I didn't want to put Greg on the spot at our first meeting, but quickly the wheels start spinning. How do we do this? And I don't think Eric was there to hear it either at the time, but it might be that the resident care attendant and med tech are one and the same person, and there's one dedicated to each home. But the residents in each of the homes would have the same access and availability of the whole campus as they would have in the larger model, by virtue of it being set out in the front of the property. Either the larger model or the 3 residential homes would be a little offset from the larger part of the campus anyway, but they're still part of the campus. They're inside the walled community.
And that's the other distinguishing feature of a board and care in a community. These homes would be specifically built very thoughtfully and intentionally for this purpose, and they would be incorporated still into the larger campus. So in that regard, there's very little difference between the two approaches, the larger building for 15 million or the 3 homes for approximately half that. And they would have a little bit more intimacy and actually a higher degree of staffing, because it would probably be 5 to 1 on the resident care ratio. So then it was a few other questions, and then I had requested a little time to explore. You know, were there zoning issues, other issues? Would this concept be well received by the residents? That's what we're still gathering input on. What other possible barriers might they be to do this if everybody wanted to go forward? The first was zoning, and you know, happily, it turned out it's not a zoning issue. We could do the commercial build, larger building, or we could do the residential construction, 3 smaller buildings, all within the current zoning for that parcel out in the front of the property. So that was a big box to check. We haven't yet contacted several homeowner companies just to say what would it cost to spec out a home like that, you know, get it permitted and built. The idea is they conceptually, at this point, they would probably be 3 mirror image home, for lack of a better term, and that they'd essentially be identical homes. We could switch up the elevations a little bit if we wanted to give them a little individual character and so on. But that's essentially why I was invited back to give this message, and then subsequently there'll be a process for getting feedback and more questions. Another thing I should add is that generally it's been our belief that variety and choice can be a very good thing. So potentially what it would do for the Eschaton Village Carmichael here is give a more residential delivery of assisted living up in the front of the property. The existing assisted living, the thinking is, no matter which model we went with up front, we would start the remodeling process of the existing assisted living, which, as you know, is predominantly studios, so that maybe we take, don't hold me to these numbers, I'm just setting an example, maybe we take, you know, 34 of the 38, and we combine those 34 into 17 larger rooms, 1-bedrooms. And then maybe we keep 4 studios just to have a lower price point or shorter stay kind of option. And then if we did that, plus add the new inventory out front in the residential homes, it'd be very near a push on total capacity. Because my belief that as it relates to assisted living here at Eschaton Carmichael, the issue really for assisted living isn't capacity, it's more design. You know, not a lot of people find just a studio selection the option they're hoping for the long run. So the idea is, if we went that direction, and in fact even if we went to larger building, that the existing assisted living would go through some significant redesign to convert a lot of those studios into a fewer number of 1-bedrooms. And really, if you look around at a lot of the new competition and what's available in the market, that really is the only part of Eschaton Village Carmichael that's really outdated, just having the studio option. So, but at the end of the day, if we were to go down this path, we'd be able to create a new physical environment for the delivery of assisted living that was of a residential type out in front, and then have a remodeled, more traditional type of delivery of assisted living where it exists today. So it might appeal to those who put a lot of value in choice, and then it might potentially even position the village to compete better into the future, because there's more things for people to select from as you look here. The other thing that came up was, And I'd first like to acknowledge everybody's been very patient already. We've been talking about this expansion for some time, and I know whatever model we choose, people want to just get on with it. So I certainly understand that. I don't know that this would slow things down a lot. We'd have to hear from a home builder to determine that. But certainly being able to check off the zoning box was a big one. I cannot think of a reason why state licensing would object to this change in direction, because it's still integrated in with the whole campus. Plus, they already license 6,600 board and cares in the state of California. So I don't think that's one. I think, and the construction timeline for residential, when they get to work, might even be faster than commercial. I couldn't speak to that. But either way, what I had suggested to the resident council was that we try to come to some determination fairly rapidly so we could progress on with one model or the other and get that expansion and improvement completed. So that is the full length of my narrative of what I went over the resident council with, and what I was asked to come back and tape today. I'm sure the resident council on their own still had a number of different questions after I met with them. We all think of questions, for a while on after we hear something. And I'm sure there'll be quite a few questions from the larger resident body that we'll need to take. But as I said a moment ago, we would like to do it with, responsible due haste so we could get one model or the other going now that we're out of COVID, regardless of what the cost was. So just to bear repeating as I close, the only thing that started this discussion was really the significant elevation in cost. $15 million is a lot for 20 additional apartments. But then I think it is interesting just to throw this other alternative into the work for discussion. So I don't know if you had intended question and answer today or just wanted, good.
Yeah, we do.
Good. Well, I hope I have the
And
answers
thank
to your
you.
questions.
That's a very good explanation of where your thoughts are at this point.
Thank you.
We do have questions, some of which will maybe be a little redundant because you've covered a lot. But we're going to start with David Lindgren. And David needs a microphone.
I can yell. Now, let me, is this on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The questions, we've been assigned some questions to ask, and I have a couple on costs, on money, which I think you have answered. But nonetheless, I would like to read the question as we've kind of agreed to state it. Namely, that we've been told that the current plan for ALU is prohibitively expensive. Would this other plan for 3 residential houses enable us to do this more quickly? Would the cost be less than the present plan? If so, how much? How much less? I think I've heard some things on those 3 topics.
Yeah. Prohibitively expensive. It is very expensive, shockingly expensive, but there is a path forward to do it. As I mentioned, with the current interest rate environment, we could take out debt for $4 or $5 million to cover that escalation, and it would be spread over a great many years, but that is still additional debt. The other cost of the homes at this point is a guesstimate on my part, but assuming that we already have the land, I think if somebody told any one of us you could have $2 to $2.5 million to build a home with 5 bedrooms and you don't have to worry about the cost of land, I think we'd assume we could build a pretty nice home. But that's what the next step. First, zoning was the big deal, and then talk to a few home builders to get their perspective. But if the higher number were even true, the $2.5 million, 2.5 times 3, 7.5, that would literally be 1/2 of the cost of the larger approach. And then timeliness, if we really, gave it our high priority and got right on it, I don't know that the timeliness would have to be significantly different, one than the other. We would have, if we went the residential, we would have to get a homeowner builder under contract, but we haven't even done a construction contract for the larger one yet. So I don't know that their timelines would be significantly different one another. Really, it comes down to two things, well, three things. The cost, which is one half the smaller, the residential versus the larger one. The staffing, which is actually a higher staffing ratio in a more intimate setting. And then the idea of having a couple of different delivery model concepts available on the campus, one residential and one traditional.
Okay, Ada?
Would there be 2-bedroom, 2-bath units available in the houses?
2-bedroom, 2-bath units.
Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, the idea I had thrown out was probably 5 bedrooms, all designed for assisted living. So to the extent that we've always talked in more recent years about universal design and how people navigate around for wheelchairs or walkers or whatever they may need at some point in time, those bedrooms would be designed with that in mind. And then as far as an outlet for a couple, there might be, say, one of the 5 bedrooms was built 1.5 times the size of the other 4. So rather than a 2-bedroom, it might just be a considerably larger bedroom within the house. And then, a 2-bedroom apartment, again, these would be purpose designed and built, so that would be more resident input. But my initial thought was maybe 5 bedrooms, with one of the bedrooms being considerably larger to make a couple more at home and comfortable.
And each one would have 1 bathroom?
Yes. Yeah.
Including the larger
that was very clear even from my initial meeting with the resident council, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then
Okay.
there'd be a shared living room area, a kitchen, so on. Garages were the other thing that came up. Would there be garages? I don't know that there would be garages because of, we treat the parking more like, if it was residential, more like street parking, if you would.
Right.
But there's going to be the other larger parking project that's going to add, 50 or 60 parking slips to the village, which is going to go on individually as a separate project on its own anyway. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sally?
I'm interested in staffing. Will there be sufficient staffing to maintain quality in each of the homes? Some jobs will be shared, I understand that. But is there somebody on staff in each home 24/7?
That would absolutely be the idea, unless I see Eric or Greg giving me one of these, which I don't. But, the idea is it would be a little bit more expensive operating model because it doesn't have people congregated like it is in a more traditional setting. But the idea is there'd certainly be a resident care / med tech in each of the 3 homes, not one bouncing around between homes.
Beverly?
Yes, would exercise programs be combined in one area, or would there be an exercise program for each individual house? Also, could there be an outdoor common gathering space for activities?
Yeah, so the activities is a programmatic question. There would certainly be activities. Much of the programming would be the same no matter which assisted living model. Residents, I think we could have a conversation, but I don't see why residents would be confined, as it were, to their own home. If they want to do a floor exercise or whatever type of activity or exercise, they could intermingle between the homes, or they could come over to the main part of the campus here. And then, I'm sorry, the second part, staffing. No, what was the second
It was
part here?
outdoor common gathering.
Oh, outdoor. That's largely going to depend on the footprint when we get together with a builder and say, how do we set 3 homes here? What's the setback from Walnut? what landscape buffer do we want, and then as you come this way towards the main building, and there is a little hill there, you know, yeah, it'd be ideal if there could be a patio space at each home and things like that, but can't speak to that yet because I'm not certain how the space would be utilized for the three homes, the footprint for the three homes.
Do all of the houses have to be about the same size?
A little
or
closer, Sally.
Do all of the homes have to be about the same size, or could one of them, perhaps the one in the middle, be larger to accommodate all of the larger activities for the three homes?
Well, that's a very good question. I said during my monologue at the start that they'd probably be three mirror image homes, but it doesn't have to be the case. Again, these are purpose designed for the intention of delivering assisted living. So they wouldn't, it'd probably save money and be more expedient for time if they were identical homes, but they wouldn't have to be. That's part of the resident input. If one of the homes, as you say, perhaps the middle one, maybe had a slightly larger living room area for other types of activities, that's exactly the kind of input, if we went this direction, we would want and design into it. So that's a perfect example of things to consider as if we look to that model.
Laura?
In order to avoid isolation in assisted living, how do you envision keeping the residents involved in the larger community and socially active?
Well, that's also a good question. You know, if we built either model, the 20 apartment or the three homes with 5 bedrooms each, either one would be out on the front side of the campus. So it will have to be very intentional on our part to make sure that they aren't isolated because they are the furthest building apart from the larger congregation of buildings. So that doesn't speak so much to the two model options. That gets more back into the day-to-day planning of activities and including people and making the whole campus available to its residents and things like that, which would be which would be just one of those operations things we would identify that we would have to be very attentive to.
Diane?
In order to save time and money, would you consider using companies that are doing these types of homes already? An example would be Noah Homes.
Oh, sure. We're not married to any home. I think what we're after is, number one, going from commercial construction to residential construction, and then two, to this concept of three homes. But, I mean, I've chatted with staff about a couple of home builders, but we're not married to any of them. Right now, we're at the trying to quickly get some feasibility input. So if there's some home residential builders that have a particularly high expertise at designing what it is we're conceiving here, certainly there's no reason we wouldn't talk to them.
Al is next. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Would
Yeah.
independent living and this PL units, people living there have any input into how these are designed?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear on that. The question was, would the independent folks have input? Yeah, that's the reason for this, taping right now. The input is from the whole village. So, absolutely.
Go ahead, Mary.
In this new concept, would solar and charging stations still be included?
Well, let me take the second one first. I want to start seeing charging stations at all of our properties around Eschaton. I think, not unlike Wi-Fi, that's almost becoming a utility. People expect it. So I feel like we're a little behind that one already. So no matter what we do, I expect to see charging stations start popping up around this property and others. Solar is a very interesting question. Again, I would go back to whatever home builder company we speak with, and the cost of it, and if there's any subsidies for doing it. But if they're individual homes, it's pretty common on homes. I mean, I've seen a lot in West Roseville where they have the new kind where it's even incorporated into the tiles, like the roof tiles. So I would certainly think that would be something we would explore very seriously. It'd be nice to have zero energy homes. That'd be terrific.
Yeah. Dick?
Todd, would it be possible to build some covered walkways between the three buildings so that residents could go back and forth in bad weather?
Again, that's a design thing. I think, number one, I think the homes will be relatively close together. I don't know yet what the front entrance and the sidewalks will look like. If that's resident input, it's fine with me. The question I would ask is, are we doing anything that would cause us to have to move from residential construction to commercial construction, anything that might be perceived as joining all three of the buildings into one or something like that. As a idea, if that's what the residents want, that's fine. If it doesn't, jeopardize some other ability to build it out as we're talking about.
Stuart? Or Paulina, sorry.
I could see it.
This European model is very successful, this assisted living model, so to speak, very successful in Europe and here. Would you consider to rename, instead of residential home, the European model?
Well, I don't know specifically what you mean by the European model, but I noticed a lot of examples of co-housing and shared housing. So my concept was, because of the cost, again, was to consider another physical delivery system, which I happen to call a residential one. If there's a variation of that, again, that could be explored. But one of the things we're trying to do certainly is making sure it qualifies as residential construction as opposed to commercial construction, and then the design meet the purpose for delivering an assisted living environment for the residents. But I don't know what all the nuances, differences are of the European model versus a residential approach, but no reason those couldn't be explored. Again, I think my pledge to the resident council was, I understand the patience everybody has had so far, so I would like to see the organization do its best to move forward as rapidly as possible with whichever model we select and whatever nuances of design that each model might have.
Stuart?
Okay, how soon will the current assisted living units be remodeled?
Well, it's probably not practical to empty them out. And believe me, I have a very strong interest in that, as you know. But it would probably be done incrementally as some became available, because it's just not practical to empty the building out and do it in one fell swoop. So I don't know what would be involved with design and permitting and how we'd do it. But basically, the exercise, as I said, would be combining 2 studios into a one larger one-bedroom, and then replicating that idea around the building. So we'd probably do it on an attrition basis as certain units became available, and then try to manage the the noise and construction bother. But we'd probably have to find a way to do it simultaneous with residency and changing out some units.
Thank you.
And Barbara? Casey?
People are wondering
Closer, Barbara.
if the assisted living residents could participate in activities in independent living and also come for meals. Do you have any plans in that regard?
Well, they can now, so it shouldn't be any difference. Again, I think this is a CCRC, and no matter which concept we are talking about, it is still within the defined property of the CCRC. So in that regard, it really, no matter which we pick, it shouldn't really be any different than what is available today.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that, this has been very interesting for all of us because it's made us think about, most of us moved in as independent livers, and for me, 6 years down the line, well, all of a sudden I'm thinking more about what rights and privileges do people in assisted living have. And it's not necessarily, clear, or it's nothing that most of us have thought about. So I think that's a really good question. I just wanted to add one more that we didn't touch on, and that has to do with dining. Could you elaborate a little more? Because dining is always the top, food's the top of residents' lists.
Yeah, so again, they'd be very intentionally and purpose designed and built homes. The idea is that they would have bedrooms, they would have a living room area, they would have a kitchen and dining room. So they would have a dining room for the residents in the home. That does not mean residents are precluded from having dinner elsewhere on the campus, or the residents of the homes kind of intermingling with one another, but each one would have a kitchen, dining room, and living room. And then, whether the meals are prepared in the kitchens in the home or come down from the dining room here gets to be programming types of questions, and that's done, of course, with Greg and Eric and the food services department and the resident input, what just works best for the residents.
Good. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We appreciate being included and being asked for our opinions, and I hope we've represented some of the opinions that the majority of the residents would ask. Now we have something else that we're going to address, and that is safety. And Tammy Alves is our first speaker on that subject. I'm just going to leave the podium where it is because I'm having trouble here. Thank you, Tammy.
Oh, you're welcome. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Talk louder? Is that better? Okay. Take my mask off so you can hear me okay.
I forgot what you look like.
I know, huh? Got my mask off. Yeah. Again, my name is Tammy Alves. I'm Director of Resident Services. I'm here to discuss two different areas. I have two different issues. I want to discuss your safety paperwork that you normally fill out, and also to go over the fire safety presentations that I've been putting on. Okay, first I want to discuss your safety medical paperwork that you have turned in when you first moved in, and also, put this off here, the safety presentation. So first I want to discuss your emergency form that you filled in when you first moved in. Okay, and this emergency form has your personal information, your emergency contact, your primary care physician, and then also your insurance information here. Now we're finding that a lot of times when you move in and you're coming from San Francisco, from Colorado, Texas, wherever you've moved from, you change your doctor when you first move in, then you don't come down to the wellness office and update this, or you have your son or daughter change their cell phone number and you don't update that phone number, then you go to the emergency room and then we have problems contacting them. So if you can, please come to the wellness office so we can update this information as soon as you can. So what we do with this paper is we make a copy of it. It goes to assisted living. So then when you press your pendant and we go to your apartment or cottage and we send you to the hospital, this form goes with you to the hospital. Okay, so this goes with you so they know who to contact for emergency situations. Okay, so this is very important that this is updated on a regular basis when there's any changes. Okay, so that's one form. Then the other form that we have that a lot of people have filled out, some people have it, some people don't, is what we call the POST form. And people ask what POST stands for. Physician Orders of Life-Sustaining Treatment. Okay? So this form you want to take with you to your doctor's office, and it could be filled out with your doctor, physician, nurse practitioner, or physician assistant. Okay? Now they go over this with you. It has to be signed. People bring it to the wellness office without a signature on it. It is not valid without a signature on it. Okay? So we take a copy of this, we put it in your chart. This goes back to your apartment or cottage with you. Okay? So now this goes back to your apartment. It goes on your refrigerator or your cabinet. This stays with you. Now the third thing we want you to do is have a med list with you. Put that med list next to this. So if we go to you and you're unconscious on the floor, we have a copy of your med list. And we're going to take that med list and we're going to send this with the med list to the hospital with you. Part of the problem that we're having is when a resident has an issue and we're trying to gather your meds together and we're trying to send you out to the ER, we need to get you to the hospital safely. We're trying to get information together, and people have multiple doctors, and they're not updating all this information in your medical network. We want to make sure that you're getting the best care that you can get when you're leaving us. So we're finding that we're having problems contacting family members, and we're not getting all the medication with you when you need to go out. So we want to make sure that you're getting the best care that you can. And I know you're independent, but we also want to make sure that you get the best care you can when your family's not here to help you. We want to be able to help you, okay? So with that being said, we're going to go to the next part, which is the fire safety presentation. Now, as you all know, I have been doing classes once a week. The classes are over now, and I have 42 residents, and I'm going to be hunting down and getting them to finish the classes one-on-one. Once those classes are done, then we'll be doing the fire drills. Okay, so the fire drills, we will be getting notices when those drills will be starting, and the drills will be notified on K4, and also in the mailboxes, you'll be getting plenty of notice on when those start. And we'll be getting assistance with the Fire Safety Committee, and that Fire Safety Committee will be discussed by Mary Dial. Anybody have any other questions for me? Okay, thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. We greatly appreciate this.
Thank you.
And it's a step in the right direction. And now it's Mary's turn.
Tammy's discussion just leads me right in to talk to you about the EVC newly chartered safety committee. This committee was formed by a group of residents concerned about the things Tammy just covered. What are the emergency procedures for residents and where to find them? Emergency instructions for the residents are covered in the resident handbook, but they're a little scattered, making it difficult to get a comprehensive understanding of what is expected of residents during an emergency. The committee agreed we want to present a program that covers the issues people worry about, a program that would be in line with EVC instructions and a way to help ourselves and EVC if we should ever have such a serious situation. What we have in mind is to follow Tammy's lead in defining what we are calling neighborhoods to match assembly locations Tammy has assigned. An example of a neighborhood would be a group of apartments between fire doors or between a fire door and an exit. Within each neighborhood, we will need two resident coordinators. Resident coordinator responsibilities are being worked on, but the idea is that in an emergency, the coordinator would, if possible, knock on doors to be sure everyone in their neighborhood is out and headed to the best exit for that location. At the assembly location, the coordinator would make a note of anyone missing and be able to report that information to EV staff or fire department or other regulatory agency. Accomplishing this means getting to know your neighbors and hopefully having some social events. There's so many nice gathering spots throughout the building where you can meet. Or once the dining room can allow it, you can have a meal together. Because we live in independent living, we are on our own to get to the assembly locations. When we know our neighbors, we're much more alert to those who may need a little extra help, and our goal is to help ourselves and each other to be safe. We intend to supply you with more information as we develop this plan. All information we give to you will have been reviewed and approved by EVC management. We've already pulled together the emergency procedures from the resident handbook and put it all on a single card for your convenience. We're working on a door hanger with the words, "This unit has been vacated," printed on it, which you would put on the hall side doorknob as you leave, so fire department and EVC staff will know that you have left the building. We will encourage you to put your pulse, emergency contact information, and a list of your medicines perhaps in a plastic bag and display it on your refrigerator or other prominent location. We're looking into go bags. What should be in it? It needs to be lightweight, easy to carry, but have things like your medication, cell phone and charger, phone numbers, your glasses or hearing aid batteries, etc. We've discussed the issue of alarms and the importance of an all clear when the incident is over. We talked about locations where we could be evacuated if it's necessary. We would most likely be bused to other Eschaton locations. As independent residents, we are sincerely dedicated to finding useful ways to help ourselves and each other, but in a way so that you don't have to read a manual to know what to do it. If you're acquainted with your neighbors, have participated in a few gatherings to get information, know what to take with you and where to go, looking out for one another along the way, an emergency would be a lot less stressful. To say again, our goal is to assist EVC staff in case of an emergency by preparing for a safe, orderly exit from the building to the assembly locations and looking out for one another. If you're called upon to help, well, you probably will be, if you're called upon to help with this plan, I really hope you will join us. Only ILU residents can make this work. We need to look out for ourselves and each other. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact any member of the committee. The members of the committee are myself and Eve Bressler. We are currently serving as co-chairs. Other members are Bill Daniels, Joyce Gilbertson, Laura Jean Hagerman, Bob Link, Norm Smith, and Al Walden. And I want to give a special thank you to Tammy. She has just been a wonderful source of information and a great help to us. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you.
Next, we have Sally Murphy with good news. Oh, Sally needs a microphone. It's coming. This is all new for everybody, so.
You are looking at a very happy camper over here. With the money I gave Stuart this morning, We have just hit $14 shy of $1,700, and I am really over the moon. And I think there are two good parts of this besides the money. 23 people did something to make that happen. They were all happy to get out and do something useful and feel needed, and it just was a good experience. And I had several sales that people were just so happy to get something really, really nice that they could afford. And that's kind of why I do what I do. That's the part that really matters to me. We made lots of money. We went from a whole garage that was full, I mean full of furniture, to about a third of a half of a garage. And Discovery Shop came and took what we didn't sell, and they took almost all of it. They are so good to us. And I had jokingly said that my next sale was going to be Christmas in July, and then I realized that July started 4 days after our sale, so I changed my plan. But we'll have another mini sale sometime soon. But I'm just very happy. Everybody supports us very well, and it's a useful service, and it just makes me feel good.
That's great. Thank you, Sally. It's, I think when people have a chance to work together and get to know each other better, it's all for the good. So thank you all. Thank you especially, Todd, for including us in your thoughts about the possible new project. We appreciate it. And we appreciate everyone here who's contributed, especially the members of Channel 88, who put in a lot of time to make this happen. Thanks, everybody.